What's going on, everybody, and welcome to another Angle of Pursuit podcast. Today we are talking all things Darlington. We are recapping the week that was at Daytona. What went right? What went wrong? How did Ryan Preece end up upside down?
Oh my
All of
gosh.
that. Plus, get into this week's action. Give you some of our thoughts, our bets. Recording this a day late, but hopefully you checked out our pod with Chris Wormy talking all things 2023 NASCAR playoffs. Gave some thoughts there, some long shots, some guys to avoid, all that good stuff. But for now, it's time for the Angle of Pursuit.
Ross Chastain used the wall all the way around this racetrack.
Logano has been the class of the field.
Check out the big brain on grass.
Yeah, I need to change my underwear.
Brian Twining, it is Darlington week. It is week one of the college football season. The stars are aligning. The betting gods have given us the gift of an amazing weekend to attack, and I couldn't be more excited.
Yeah, me neither, man. That's why I kind of got the permission from the wife. I'm heading to Vegas this weekend. Looking back on our NASCAR bets earlier this year, the Goodyear 400 was very kind to us. We hit a bunch of bets at the spring race here earlier this season. And like you said, with week one of college football, there is going to be a lot of money handed to sports books and a lot of beers drank by me this weekend.
Oh, it sounds glorious. Sounds extremely glorious. Yeah, we're recording this a day late because of scheduling, but with the other pod with Wormy talking all things playoffs, which if you have not done that, check that out. Please go back and check that out. I will drop a link in the comments as well. But please go check that out. We had a really good conversation with Chris talking all things playoffs and just recapping the regular season and all kinds of fun stuff. So very exciting conversation. And I'm excited for this week. I college football has garnered a lot of my attention, but I still am very excited about Darlington. I'm still very excited about this race and the weekend of today's Thursday. We got college football today, tomorrow, Saturday. We got practice and qualifying. We got the race on Sunday. We got a game on a couple games on Sunday. We got a game Monday. It's glorious for bettors, for football fans, for all involved. But before we spin this thing forward, we do need to recap the week that was, look at some DraftKings, look at some FanDuel, and get out of here. So I'm gonna throw up a few lineups from the weekend, and we can just kind of use it as a jumping off point to talk about the week that was, what we liked, what we didn't like. Obviously it was an interesting week. Daytona always makes things fun. I thought for sure Chase Briscoe was going to win. And when I thought Chase Briscoe to win, that should have let me know that he definitely was not going to win.
Exactly. And I think it was telling that he was leading pretty much the entire race. And there was absolutely no effing chance that the NASCAR gods were going to allow a Daytona race to go off unscathed by a crash or two.
Yeah, I was doing a fantasy draft. I was melting down with Chase Briscoe. And of course, I'm glad, like with Daytona, especially with longer shots, it can be really tempting to bet their top 5, their top 10, their manufacturer matchups. But if they have a real shot to win, sometimes they find a way to do it. But oftentimes they end up ending up in the big one and somebody else skates through. And that's why they don't end up getting there at the end. So I thankfully avoided all that and had a decent and was able to salvage a little bit that way. But so a few lineup thoughts over on DraftKings. Let me see, I think I need to spread this out a little. There we go. Okay, there we go. Now we can see everything. So this is one of the lineups we did. The Chase Byron lineup was solid. Not quite good enough. Eric Jones was okay. But Chris and Bubba really let us down, and that's what we get for going to the front of the board and not peppering the back. Let's see. This one was one of the better ones that I did. So McDowell was weird. So I got a little spooked, I think, on Sunday morning.
Yeah, when they
Saturday
figure out
Saturday morning, they were talking about the issues they were still having, and like Ryan at iFantasy Race was tweeting out to be extra cautious, and at the end of the day, it didn't matter. He was great. Bowman was great. Byron was great. Corey LaJoie ended up getting in the top 10, which was great. Brendan Poole stunk, but I mean, at his less than 5K, you can afford it. And our boy BJ almost pulled out a top 20. Imagine if we had those top 20 odds. That would have been really nice. So this lineup definitely salvaged my my weekend for sure on DraftKings.
Yeah,
The other winner,
what was the winnings on that one? I couldn't see it.
what's that?
On the previous lineup.
Yeah, so I got
nice.
226 and got $125, so can't complain.
Beautiful.
And then this one was like a $5 Bing. Byron Keselowski, Buescher, Chris Buescher, 3-time winner. And I know we talked a little bit about it with Wormy and kind of how, obviously Reddick had his issues in Michigan, and Buescher kind of was able to pull
advantage of that. Yeah.
But 3 wins is nothing to sneeze at. It was an incredible season for him. Very much in the thick of the playoff race. It'll be very interesting to see. Richard Stenhouse wrecked early. Didn't love to see that.
Of course he did.
Fine. Haley was fine. If that was a better number, I might have done even better. And then over here, old Hamlin did not go the right way. Chastain was fine. McDowell was great. Bowman was great. Austin Dillon, what could have been to what
I was just gonna say, like, it in that one wreck, it took out Dillon, it took out Austin Cindric, it took out Ryan Blaney, it took out so many incredible super speedway drivers, which definitely opened the door for the Buescher RFK team to eventually find their way up front. And then inexplicably, in my opinion, watch Brad Keselowski push Chris Buescher to a win as opposed to them doing it the opposite.
Yeah, that was very interesting. Obviously, Brad K trying to get those owners points, stealing it up, but that was very, very interesting.
Yeah, and something real quick, speaking on Buescher before we transition there.
Yeah.
The idea popped into my mind as you were talking about how maybe, some of the wins, whatever, 3 wins is nothing to sneeze about. But going back to 2021, when Alex Bowman had 4 wins and you had drivers saying, oh, he backed into a win here, he's a hack. Like, is there a possibility that, yes, Chris Buescher has definitely finally shown the talent that he can put behind the wheel. But I mean, considering the circumstances of some of these wins and where they were at, like, is he kind of fool's gold as we enter the playoffs?
Chris Wormy seemed to think so. I'm a little more, and he's interesting because he's like, everything's based on what your perception and expectations were coming into the year.
True.
So
Very true.
coming into the year, we had him way down here with like Michael McDowell and Chase Briscoe. And, he was a fine guy, but he was going to roll around mid-pack. But we did think RFK had some real shots to kind of make some serious improvement. We saw improvement down the stretch in 2022. We thought, okay, here we go. If you told me one RFK driver is going to get 3 wins, the other is going to get 0, I definitely would have said it was Keselowski and not Buescher. But Buescher also won at places where he's been solid and has looked good on road courses and has proven himself. But he also got his 3 wins in kind of the part of the season where a lot of teams, like even Big Hendrick, they don't take it as seriously. They're not as competitive. They know that there's not a lot of correlation to the rest of the playoff races. So I don't know. Like, it's probably one of those things where he had a great year, and at the end of the day, he'll probably get eliminated from the playoffs a little bit earlier than we expected. And it'll kind of be one of those afterthoughts. And as we're talking about whoever, one of the Hendrick guys or Kyle Busch or somebody hoisting the trophy.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk betting because it was a bloodbath. Chris Wormy takes the whole week off for a reason. We tried to tell ourselves. I will say Briscoe, I felt good about. I don't feel like the calling guys were ever really in the mix. I feel real dumb for making those bets. I think the Austins were fine. Cindric. I am mad at myself because I said RFK or Penske is going to win, and of course an RFK, guys, and I have no exposure to one of the longer shots, so it's like what are you doing, man? Just trust yourself. You clearly have a thought. Go with
Well,
it.
and I think that goes with playing Daytona slightly safer. Although you see a lot of red there, but not betting anybody inside
Yeah.
a short number to win is kind of the way that you attack that race. And most of the time it hits because you get a lot of weird stuff that happens, and you see a lot of red in mine. But I actually wound up profiting over 2.5 units because of the overtime and amazingly getting Bubba at top Toyota at like a 14th place finish, which is ridiculous.
We also normally our unit count is much higher. So we just took a lot of shots with quarter unit, half unit, a third of a unit.
Yeah.
This week, I think we're going to get back on the horse and really nail it down and find some value, because I think there is opportunities and there's a few drivers I really want to make sure we discuss. And obviously we talked with Wormy about how the playoff goes and how to when you want to be aggressive on drivers, when you want to avoid guys who might be really needing to push for a win. And if you take them outright, that's one thing. But if you take them in matchups or top 10 bets, and they're going to try and win because they have to advance, you might end up regretting some of the stuff. So we'll start at the top of the board where we have Kyle Larson, as short as 5-1. Truex 5-1. Then we get into Byron 7.5, Denny Hamlin 7.5, 8. And then Ross is kind of that last guy inside 10-1, or around there. Where's your head at in this range, and who is garnering the most interest for you?
Well, we say that I've said this numerous times. I'm not betting anybody pre-practice and qualifying at 5-1, or I'm not. It's hard for me to get there.
Yeah.
Okay. Now that said, I do think that both Kyle Larson and Martin Truex Jr. are up there, and it's warranted because they're both extremely good here. They're both really fast. The playoffs have started, so I think you see like a Larson kick it into another gear. But for me, I'm rocking the hat. I do think that we see a rejuvenated Ross Chastain now that Trackhouse does not have to. I mean, yeah, you still got to worry about Daniel Suarez winning races just for from a team perspective, but they're not trying to get him into the playoffs, so they can now focus all of their attention on Ross while he goes for a championship.
Yeah, and I think there's a few guys in that bucket that I really want to make sure we hit on, because I think there is some what do we do with guys like Ross Chastain who have been basically MIA for a month or two. So it's interesting to see you go back to him. Obviously, this is a good spot for him. I've seen some booty chatter about kind of corollaries. There's not really a good comp for Darlington, but you can use some Homestead, some Dover, and some California as kind of good compounds, tire wear tracks that may give us some insight on who could thrive and who could make the smart decisions when it matters most.
Well, I just on the Chastain thing, like when you look at his finishing results here in the next gen car, it leaves a lot to be desired. And it's clear though that even with 3 20th or worse finishes at this track in the new car, the sports books clearly understand this guy is incredible here.
Yeah.
He has a ton of speed. He's really good on this track. And no matter where he's finishing, like he is going to be a contender up front at the end of the day. And it's whether or not he doesn't get too physical with a Hendrick guy and wind up getting wrecked.
Yeah, I think for me, if you can get 10-1, I think it's fine. But I kind of want to see it in practice and qualifying before I get involved there.
Yeah, no, I'm not going to bet it right now. I'm just saying from this group, I think he's the most intriguing and somebody I'm keeping my eye on for sure.
William Byron is absolutely incredibly intriguing. There we go. 750 to win. Obviously has been dominant. Won here in May. It's really interesting diving into kind of the driver ratings and kind of the runs for a lot of these drivers, because the finishing results I don't think are indicative of kind of who was the best cars those days. Like Martin Truex, for example, had the second best driver rating, led stage 1, 10th in stage 2, and then was out of the race 31st after an accident in stage 3. And so there's a few things like that. Larson had some issues late. Chris Bell was kind of middling, but was pushing in stage 2. So it's interesting to see. So you really want to dive into the numbers and find somebody that's find out why things happened, or like I know you do, I know Derek Yoder does, I try to as much as I can, is go back and rewatch the old races and see what happened and see if we can get any nuggets, see if we can, oh, actually this guy was right there, and then because of a late issue, the finishing position ended up not looking as strong. Byron is tempting, especially if you can get 8-1. I think if he puts it anywhere near pole, that number's dropping. But even then, like, what's 6.5-1? I think it's probably fine.
Yeah, exactly.
Especially as long as he has a little bit of competition in terms of speed and whatnot. The other guy that I want to talk about, kind of in that Ross Chastain bucket, is Kyle Busch. Another guy, obviously RCR has been incredibly inconsistent. When they've been good, they've been damn good.
True.
But then they've had issues and been slow and just kind of been non-existent. We talked about him with Wormy. Obviously, he's somebody that, especially in the middle of the season, gets very easily frustrated. Probably has a car he can get out there and keep on the track and get points. And he just kind of like, okay, window down. I'm done for the day. Let's go to the garage and be angry. That being said, it's playoffs. He's got a legit chance to win the championship. I think this is a great spot for him. And he is the first outright on my card at 12-1.
Woo!
I am feeling KFB this week. He obviously has a wider range of outcomes. But I am a little more optimistic that, like I said, he's invested because of the playoff push. And I also, like, last year was such a weird ending with the 18 car,
JGR and stuff.
Yeah, so it's just like I'm a little more optimistic that he can be really invested and make a push, because I think obviously he's getting towards the end of his career. This may be one of his best shots to legitimately win a championship. And to do it for Richard Childress, I think would be really meaningful to him. So I think this is a good spot where he can make some serious noise. Beyond him, we got Chris Bell at 11-12. We have Tyler Reddick as long as 13. Kevin Harvick, I was talking to iFantasy Race a little bit about him. This feels like a really good spot for him to get his win if it's coming, but the sentiment seems to be that it's just even it's like this or Bristol is a really good opportunity for him, but not sure he wins either.
Like, okay, so Harvick, to me, I think he's somebody who he could skate by to the next round by just placing really well. And he's fully aware of that, because these are tracks that he runs really good at throughout his history. And he probably knows his car does not have race winning speed. And if you go back and you watch the spring race, he had no business finishing where he did. He was probably the biggest benefactor, outside of Byron, obviously winning the race, of the late wreck with Truex, and then the Kyle Larson and Ross Chastain incident. Like, I think Kevin Harvick was the one that benefited the most, because he finished the race with a junked car.
Yeah.
So, I mean, like, it's going to take him some more weirdness to happen up front in order for him to find the lead, win the race, because he simply does not have the speed to compete up front.
Yeah, he was basically a top 10 car the majority of the day, and because of the stuff at the end, he was able to pull a second. So I think that's a very good point on your end. And that's something you'll want to think about. Like, okay, do these guys think they need to win to get to round 2? Or do they think, I could top 5 to 7 in both this place, Bristol, be fine at Kansas, and maybe get through to round 2 and then figure out where I'm going to win there? So you really want to try and it's obviously hard to do, but listen to some of the interviews, think about, especially like the pre-race stuff, like while practice and qualifying is on, have that volume on so you can listen to driver interviews,
Exactly.
try and get some nuggets, listen to some podcasts, and hopefully garner some ideas about what their plans are. Because I think you're going to be able to take advantage of some of these guys, both for and against, in matchups, in top 10s, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and Harvick too, he's still pretty good value in the placement market this week. I mean, you're talking about a guy who has top 10s. I think it's like in 17 of the last 18 Darlington races. And the only time he didn't, it was when his car blew up.
Yeah.
So, I mean, like, this dude is a top 10, top 5 machine at this track. It's just he doesn't have the speed to win. So you got to find a way to leverage his skill level here. And that's going to be in matchups or in those placement things, because you're probably going to get some good juice on him against drivers who come in probably looking a little bit better this year, who are maybe a little bit hotter than him. So like, he's somebody I'm attacking in those markets, not on the outright.
From an outright perspective, is there anybody else that we haven't gotten to that you want to make sure we hit on?
Well, I don't think, like, obviously I'm not advocating for going big unit play here or necessarily even thinking this can happen, but somebody who's brought speed at a ton of tracks and who's been actually really good here and probably would have had a better finish had he not had another shitty ass pit stop at the end of stage 1. That's Bubba Wallace.
Yeah.
30-1. He ran inside the top 5 pretty much the entirety of stage 1. And that was something also I think it's important to note. When I went back and watched this race, my stupid brain was telling me passing was extremely hard at this track. It was basically follow the leader. There was a handful of guys that were able to make passes and move through the field, and everybody else just kind of maintained. And
yeah,
one
and
thing
to
that
your
Wallace
point on that, Derek Yoder mentioned it on the NASCAR betting preview, but 4 of the last 5 races, the winner has come from the top 5 starting positions. So yes,
exactly,
it's been hard to, obviously smart teams will find ways with pit stops and stuff to try and move up the grid, but you have to be in that conversation to have a real shot to win this race.
Yeah, and to that point, Bubba Wallace has been one of the fastest cars qualifying this season. 2311 has unloaded extremely well, and he's qualified 8th and 2nd the last 2 times at this track.
Yep.
So he's somebody I like in the potential to qualify on pole market, 14, 16-1. And then also if anybody can like benefit from going all out in this race at a track that, he's gotten better at, but people don't expect it, it's going to be Bubba Wallace. Like,
yeah. And we've also seen from him a lot more ability to like maintain and be in the conversation and not push it when he doesn't need to. And with Kansas coming up next week, a place where he's won, I might be more interested in the top 5 market, the top 10 market, head to heads with Bubba than from an outright perspective. But I totally understand it. If he's there and has a real chance to win, he's going to push for it and try and get it.
I was just going to say, devil's advocate to that point, knowing how good he is at Kansas and the expectation of a really good finish and the lack of expectations of him at this track, I think this is a spot where maybe they get a little risky and they go for the win right now and garner more points next week at a track that he's extremely good at.
Let us know down in the comments. Do you think the guys that are on the cut line or flirting with the cut line in the playoff standings are going to be more aggressive this week? Or do you think they're going to try and rack up those points and put themselves in a position to not have to win to advance? But yeah, I will say, be careful with Eric Jones. I think it's going to be easy to get to him, especially since he won this race in 2022. Chevy is kind of not really giving Legacy the push they need, especially at this point with them not being a playoff matter, like in the playoff conversation. Eric Jones has been kind of just disappointing across the board, so be careful with those numbers.
Yeah, and one more point on Eric Jones. So I went back and I looked since this race became the opening round race of the NASCAR Cup Playoffs in 2020. At least four of the top 5 finishers in each of those 3 playoff races were playoff competitors, and the 2 guys that were not were Chastain and Eric Jones twice.
Interesting.
So, like, don't expect some weird name to pop up in the top 5. Or if there is, like, you're taking a real risk there.
Yeah, I think like Talladega, obviously, and then maybe I don't know, like there's one other spot where there's like kind of a unknown, or not like an unknown, but like a non-playoff driver really making noise.
Like,
and
obviously Chase Elliott could
yeah,
do
I was
it,
gonna say there's a couple guys that are outside looking in, including Chase Elliott, that could make things, obviously a little interesting. But a lot to get into. Beyond Bubba,
No.
I don't think there's anybody else really worth the conversation.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
let's move it along. I'll actually pull up Caesars, our friends over at Caesars. Oh, I did want to mention, and I added it to the card this way. On Caesars,
Kyle's getting crazy, folks.
Nah, I mean it's just I did the race boost, and I did because I like Kyle Busch to win. Why bet it at 12 when I can bet it at 16 with Max Verstappen's gonna get to turn 1, Brian, and win the race, so we don't have to worry about anything.
Do you know that he's won over 85% of all the races this year? Could you imagine a season in NASCAR where a driver does that?
Well, sure, but like we've seen dominance in all kinds of sports. We've seen Gretzky, we've seen Jordan, we've seen LeBron. Like, I don't know.
For as supposedly popular as F1 is, could you imagine?
It's not supposed. It's popular.
Could you imagine the shitstorm that would occur if, say, Kyle Larson went out and had won like 18 of the first 26 races?
Yeah, I mean, he was pretty dominant in 2021, but yeah, I get your point.
Not to that extent, though. Like, could you imagine?
I mean, Jordan won what, 6 straight titles basically the years he played.
Yeah, but
like no one had a chance to beat Jordan. Like, I understand it's a little different because it's not like a Tuesday night against the Pistons or a Wednesday night against the Hawks. They, a team could potentially win, but like, I don't know. I don't know. I'm just excited for your annual tradition of Sunday morning tweets. It's just a race to the first corner, and here's Max Verstappen. And
just woke up! What a surprise! Max Verstappen is 28 seconds ahead.
I'll take my odds boost. I'll take the 16-1, and I'll run to the window. If you're on Kyle Busch and you have access to this, I think it's if you don't want to bet it, I totally get it. But I'd rather have 16-1 on Kyle Busch than 12-1, and maybe I'm being a little over dramatic with Verstappen, but feels pretty safe to win.
Yeah, honestly, he should win.
So let's go. Where do you want to go? Do you want to look at some manufacturer stuff? You want to look at some top 10s? What's garnering the most interest for you?
Yeah, let's look at the manufacturer stuff real quick.
Because there's one guy, obviously, based on what I've said, that I want to do, but I want to find the best number because I feel like there's a better number out than what Caesars has. Kyle Busch to be top Chevy. Obviously, I like Kyle Busch. I think he's going to be in the conversation this week. And, we talked about it with Wormy finding ways to target drivers where there may be still have some value. And for Kyle Busch, like, I don't know that I love his top 3 prices. Definitely don't love his top 5 prices. But if I can get to him in the top Chevy market, I've seen, north of 4 or 5 to 5-1, I think. But I'm looking, and I think plus 380 might be the best number I can still get. Do you have a better number for me, like BetMGM?
So BetMGM actually doesn't have those, but
right, I'll put it down from Caesars at plus 380.
Plus 550.
What's that?
Plus 550 BetRivers.
Oh, done.
Yeah, and so I went shopping real quick, and in the same breath as we were talking about and how I said this about Kevin Harvick, at BetRivers, Kevin Harvick to be top Ford plus 340, which is astronomically better than his top 10, top 3. Well, top 3 is probably a good number, but you take away a lot of risk here because he's stronger than all of these guys at this track.
What's the number?
Plus 340.
Yeah. Like we saw it last week with Bubba. Like, obviously, we don't think Harvick's going to get 14th and still get top 4, but I think there's a very real shot that he has to beat Keselowski, Buescher. Like, you saw where Logano and Blaney were priced, like McDowell. Like, this is not the race to be high on Fords. So to get him at almost 3.5 to 1, that's a really nice number. So I'm adding that one to the card as well.
I will say I'm kind of sad. Oh no, he is there. I was gonna say Ryan Newman, Wreckfest is back.
100 to 1.
He was a disaster at this race earlier in the spring.
Yeah. Top Toyota, obviously Truex, Hamlin. The Bell number is pretty nice if you're on Christopher Bell watch this week. Tyler Reddick at 525. Any interest there?
Bubba
10 to 1.
Woo-hoo-hoo.
That's a juicy number.
And that's better than BetRivers too.
So
yeah, I'm hitting that. Screw it.
Do it. You're on Team
It's
Bubba
week,
this week.
baby.
And that's a great way to hedge a little bit, right? If he gets second or third and he's behind the Hendrick guys, you're still hitting the top Toyota and you're making some money.
Well, that's like, I see a route to him finishing top Toyota and finishing, say, 5th.
Yeah. Or 6th.
Yeah, exactly.
Because you could get Larson, Byron, Chastain, Kyle Busch, Truex, Hamlin. I mean, he could get 7th. Or I guess not. He has to finish in front of Truex and Hamlin, but
yeah, I guess for me, it's going to require Truex, I think, faltering at some point. Which I would at 10 to 1. I'm
it's
okay.
It's worth the gamble. It's not as easy as like a -110 or something, but you're getting paid out on it, so you want to do it. Bubba Wallace, Kyle Busch, and Chris Busch are all the top 10 at 6.5 to 1. That's kind of interesting.
Those are hard because I mean,
because there's 4 wheels and an engine and a wedge wrench and all this crap, and anything could fall out at any moment.
Well, 12 lug nuts, 3 engines, however many, what is it, like 18 pit crew members? Yeah. There's a lot that can go wrong there.
And you could have a perfect pit stop and the car in front of you could block your exit or something. Like, there's all kinds of stuff. Or you could just get spun out, or who knows. Top 10 market's pretty gross. We could go back over here and see if we get better numbers. The nice thing about recording this when we are is there's actually numbers up for a lot of these spots, when normally we're like, oh, well, some of the stuff's up there and not all of it, but.
And wouldn't you know it, DraftKings top 10s again. What the F?
I mean, they make no sense, but sure.
How about some consistency, people?
Well, it's weird too, because it's like the big race, and then like during football season they'll have top 10s, but like when it's quiet and there's not really a lot going on besides baseball, they're like, oh, we can't do that. We don't have time for that.
Yeah, they should have more time to actually come up with these numbers.
You can get Chris Buescher as short as -105 to top 10, which is kind of interesting. Bubba plus 110, or would you? He's probably a better like top 5, top Toyota to get.
I was gonna say his top 5 number is like 4 to 1 across the board.
You want to get paid out on it.
Yeah, I would rather hit that than, I mean, plus 110. I'd much rather find matchups.
Yeah, these numbers suck.
Yeah, I mean, to put it bluntly, like the top 10 markets have been trash this year.
Trash. Top 5. I'm gonna add William Byron plus 110. It's not sexy, but I feel like he's gonna be really solid, and he also is in a position where he doesn't have to push it. With all the wins he's banked, so he can kind of be a little more patient and maybe not necessarily like, need to feed it. So I like him at plus 110. I think I might. Let's see, can I get a better number? Plus 135 at BetRivers. Shouts to BetRivers.
BetRivers seems to have the best finishing
and if you
position
can't
numbers.
get BetRivers, because I think they're kind of hard to get to, depending on where you live. I think if as long as it's plus money, I'm pretty happy with it. But don't take like minus 115. Because I feel like he could be somebody that qualifies really well, and all of a sudden we're talking about it as a minus 140, minus 150. You're gonna be like, dang, I wish I'd hammered that. Let's look at some matchups because I think those are fun this week. So Stenhouse versus McDowell, Chastain minus 110 versus Christopher Bell is kind of interesting. But I guess with Chastain, if you're buying the bounce back and think he can be really solid, you probably want to get paid out on a little bit more than a minus 110 matchup.
I guess so, but at the same time, like if I'm expecting him to run really well here, and he's amongst the top 5 guys at this track, better than Christopher Bell, I don't hate going to that minus 110 number because that's like the preset spot in a matchup anyways.
Yeah. I expect Truex to have a really nice race, but Kyle Larson is the co-favorite for a reason, so I will take the plus 105 in the matchup.
Yeah, I like that.
Harvick versus Keselowski. Harvick being minus 110 is kind of interesting.
I do like that a lot. Especially if I like Harvick to be the top Ford, then you back that up with, well, on the other side of that, if you bet Harvick to top Ford at the plus money route, you can kind of hedge and bet Keselowski because he's the co-favorite to finish at the top of the manufacturer.
Yeah. Bowman, Suarez, Logano, Blaney, Hamlin, Byron. Byron at minus 110 against Denny is really tempting. And Kyle Busch versus Tyler Reddick. I'm going to take some more KFB.
Ooh,
I can't believe I'm on KFB this week. It's wild.
Yeah, it's been few and far between the amount of times that we've actually gone for the 8 this year.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever really been. I've never been like huge on him, but I feel like he's a good spot for him, and with a chance to really do well, I think he could fire it up. All right. Anything else you want to look at before we recap the card and get out of here?
Let's look at qualifying. I want to see that. I want to see what those numbers are.
Fastest qualifier. So Larson 4.5 for Truex, Hamlin, Byron at 7.5. Byron at 7.5 is tempting. He's been so good qualifying this year.
He has.
Chastain, I wouldn't bet to pull. He'll probably get like if he has a really good run, he'll get like third.
All right.
Chris Bell 9, Chase Elliott 12, Bubba 15.
I'm gonna add the Bubba number.
Bowman the Showman at 30.
Who?
Bowman the Showman. Yeah, I think in the like 9 to 15, 9 to 16 range is where you want to live for these. Make sure you get paid out on them. It's nice when you are excited about a car and you bet them to qualify and like basically cover all your bets for that driver for the weekend when they hit the pole. Obviously, it doesn't happen every weekend, but when it does, it's really nice. I think Byron, I think Bell, and I think Bubba are the triple Bs that I'm most interested in, but I'm not going to add any of them.
I mean, I'm just going to play Bubba because I almost...
Well, and when you're banking on him to do well and you expect him to be near the front, qualifying is probably part of that mix and you really want to be a part of it. So,
well, and
I think it's a smart bet.
And like we highlighted, and as you mentioned, Derek Yoder said it on the NASCAR Betting Preview Show, qualifying is extremely important with you have to qualify inside the top 5 to win at this track. So if I think Bubba's got a shot to win, he's going to qualify really well.
Yep. I like where your head's at. Okay. Should we recap and get out of here?
Let's do
So
it.
you can run to your flight. Okay. So I have a few bets. Kyle Busch and Verstappen to get the 16-1. Kyle Busch is top Chevy at plus 550. Kevin Harvick as top Ford at plus 340. Byron to top 5 at plus 135. I did the Larson over Truex at plus 105. Harvick over Brad K at minus 110. And KFB over Tyler Reddick at minus 110. Brian has Bubba outright at 30-1. Harvick top Ford. Bubba top Toyota, and Bubba to put it on the poll. Brian Twining, what is your favorite bet as we sit here Thursday evening?
My favorite bet, it's not going down as my best bet, but my favorite bet right now has got to be Bubba to finish as the top Toyota at 10-1, because it opens up the possibility of him finishing, say, 4th or 5th, and you're getting a much better number than his top 5 spot at 4-1. And then say he finishes outside the top 5 and he still tops the Toyota group, you're getting a way better number than that top 10, which is barely over plus money.
Yep, I think that makes sense. My best bet, favorite bet, is going to be Byron to top 5.
I like that.
The top Chevy number is interesting, but because I think Larson could be really good, I think Chastain could be involved. I think Kyle Busch could be involved. It's a harder number for me to get to, where with the top 5, I feel like there's a little more flexibility. And he's also in a position where he doesn't have to push quite as hard. So I'm going to do, actually make that 3 units.
Ooh, baby.
So that is where our cards sit. We will be back on Saturday night to get you prepped. We'll record Saturday night in your feed Sunday morning. Between now and then, after you have liked this video, enjoyed it, left a comment, hit subscribe
to the channel.
Subscribe if you have not. It literally costs you nothing. It literally does nothing except for get our content to you first.
Yep.
Does a lot for us. Make sure you go check out our talk with Chris Wormy, talking all things 2023 NASCAR playoffs. Get set. Let us know down in the comments on that video who is going to be your winner for the Cup Championship when it's all said and done, and it is the end of the day in November in Phoenix. That is Brian Twining, who will be coming to you live from Las Vegas. I'm Kyle Robert. Enjoy your weekend, and we'll talk to you next time.